Okay, everyone, let's get started. First of all, thank you so much for being here and taking your time to join our really important discussion. And thank you especially to our panelists for being here to speak to us. So I'm going to go ahead and start with our intro. Hi, everyone. I'm Lanisa Ali. I use she, her, hers pronouns. And I have the honor of serving as a co-event director for the Human Rights Council this year. Thanks so much to all of you for joining us for our speaker panel discussion on Black Trans Lives Matter tonight. Before we introduce our guest speaker panelists, I wanted to set some ground rules for our conversation. Because we want to make sure that more people can engage with what we discuss, we are recording the Zoom meeting to post on our YouTube channel and other social media platforms. We thank you for the questions you submitted when registering, and our moderator tonight will ask pre-selected questions. We encourage keeping your video on and your audio muted during this program. Today we are joined by 4 amazing panelists who will speak to us about their social justice work. August from the Frances Thompson Education Foundation, Jade from AIDS United, Jurnee from the Resource Center, and Mya from Cathedral of Hope's Transgender Council. My colleague Bethany Bass will be our moderator for the panel discussion tonight. Afterwards, we will have an audience Q&A session moderated by my colleague Lamisa Mustafa. So please private message any questions you have to her. Because we have a wide audience of people with varying familiarity with our SMU Human Rights Program, I wanted to provide some background about who we are. Out of more than 5,000 higher education institutions in the United States, SMU Human Rights is one of only 7 programs that offers a bachelor's degree in human rights, and we are also the only one in the South. Our program offers many interdisciplinary courses, global travel opportunities, and a variety of social innovation efforts. As an academic program, we are committed to cultivating a conscious group of future human rights leaders. Today's panel discussion is brought to you by the Human Rights Council, or HRC for short. We are the student board of the Human Rights Program and a student senate chartered organization. Our objective is advancing human rights advocacy and community on the SMU campus. Now, without further ado, I want to pass the Zoom mic to my colleague, Bethany.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Bethany Bass, and I use she, her pronouns, and I serve as the Vice Administrative Director for the Human Rights Council. I am so excited to be joined by 4 esteemed panelists tonight, so let's get started and meet these wonderful guests. If you will, could you please just introduce yourselves, introduce your pronouns, and describe just a little bit about your social justice work and what does it mean for you to do this kind of work?
I'll just go first. Hi, everyone. My name is August Clayton. I use he and him pronouns, they, them, and community. I am the co-executive director of the Frances Thompson Education Foundation. My social justice work precedes all of that. I started organizing around 5 years ago and was radicalized after the death of Michael Brown. And ultimately, like my first couple of years in college at Alabama State University. So basically my work started in political and electoral organizing. I moved out of that and more into like a lot more like race-based focused organizing once I came into my own gender identity. And then it kind of centered around like programming, representation. A lot of my work is on like campus organizing. So I did a few campaigns around gender neutral restrooms, all gender housing, policy work, all those fun things that we do at private schools. And then once I left my private school and went to a public institution, a lot of my work started centering HIV prevention and treatment. And now that I am so invested in higher education, I guess it's been an honor really to, I guess, dive into the foundation, which is very new. I'm really excited to talk about this work. Mostly if you haven't already done your research, it is the foundation is basically a bunch of programs, but our biggest one is giving direct scholarships to Black transgender students regardless of GPA. There are no strings attached. Mentorship, annual convenings, the whole gamut, which is pretty exciting. But all of my social justice work centers Black trans people, regardless of economic background or whatever. But for me, like, doing this work is important because I think it was Alice Walker who said, like, in a shortened way, that organizing is my price to pay for living on this earth. I know that I definitely am coming from a lot of places of privilege, even being able to do this work and be visible while doing this work. So for me, it's more of a responsibility and an obligation to make sure that my people are surviving, thriving, having their best lives. So that's it for me.
Thank you, August, for sharing. And that was incredible. And I really loved you sharing about, like, your own personal passion with organizing and what led you to be there. If I would love to hear from whoever else wants to introduce themselves and the work they do as well.
Okay, I guess I'll go next. Hi, everyone. My name is Mya. I use pronouns she, her. I'm part of the Transgender Council of Cathedral of Hope. I basically got into advocating when I think it was Transgender Day of Remembrance 2019. And then, like, I was sitting in a chair and I was like, damn, all these innocent killing, all these murders. And you know, like, I have like a voice that could like make a change. And like, if, you know, like one or two people see it, then, you know, it's making the world a better place. Well, eventually, you know, tons of people got to see it, and that's how it came to be. I used to be a former homeless person. You know, I had like crazier incidents where like things almost happened and this and that. And, you know, I didn't want anyone, because of like who they are, because of what race they are, or because of anything or religion, is to experience what I felt. And so that's why I got into being an advocate. And so, yeah. And so basically what we do at Cathedral Hope Transgender Council is that we do like, we compile a lot of resources, do a lot of trans holiday celebrations with the city of Dallas. Well, sorry, with Transgender, the Transgender Pride of Dallas. And we also write transgender manuals for other places for them to open up to being a little more accepting. And that's basically it.
Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you for the courage and for speaking out, being an activist, organizing, and all the work that you do. Jade and Jurnee, I would love to hear from you guys, you all, and to hear like what you have to say about your work, what you do, and what inspired your activism.
I can go next. So, hi everyone, I'm Jurnee. So I currently work for the Resource Center of Dallas. I'm the Outreach Coordinator. So basically what we do, of course, is we provide resources, of course. We're in regards to hormone replacement therapy. We also help with name change. So I am fairly new to my role. I've been doing it for maybe like a month or two. But I would say all in all, it's super rewarding. I love hearing people's stories and being able to relate to everyone and assist everyone in any way possible. But yeah, that's pretty much me and my work and what I do.
Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you so much for the work that you're doing.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet all of you other panelists. My name is Jade Lenore LeDuff, or Jade LeDuff, depending on how you met me. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. Thank you for inviting me to join this panel discussion this evening. I greatly appreciate it. A little bit about my social justice work. I would have to say that my social justice work is deeply rooted in my heart for people And the idea that people deserve equity across the board and marginalized people specifically have been an area that I have focused the majority of my attention. As such, currently I am one of two program managers at Age United for the Fund for Resilience, Equity, and Engagement, which is a $10 million initiative specifically geared towards two subset communities, one being TGNC folk and the other being Black, esteemed, gender-loving, I use an acronym, I usually say GBQSGL, but now I have to break it down in my head because I know language justice. Black, gay, bisexual, queer, same gender-loving men. I did it. And so those two demographics or those two communities are the priority of this particular initiative. So it's supported by the Elton John AIDS Foundation, which this is one of the largest initiatives that the Elton John AIDS Foundation has had in the US. So super honored to be a part of this particular initiative. Specifically, I focus a lot of attention on our TGNC communities. I also work with Black Trans Advocacy Coalition headquartered in Dallas, Texas, as the chairwoman of the Empower Her program that is specific to Black trans women. So a lot of the work that I do has been behind the scenes. However, there have been many opportunities that I've had to share my experience, my individual experience, and to share the experience of folks whom I represent in the community of Black and brown transgender people.
Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you so much for what you do at AIDS United. It's really important work, and we're really thankful to have all of you panelists here today. Some of y'all already touched on it, and I want to hear more about what inspires your activism, and then what are the top issues that your communities face, and how do we define liberation for the Black trans community?
Are we going in order? I feel like I'm going first each time.
Any order that you all would like.
Okay. I guess what inspires it? Well, for one, I have taken a step back. I'll make this as conversational as possible, but I've taken a step back from calling myself an activist because for myself, I view activism as reactionary and organizing as being proactive response to the things that we need in our community. But I guess what inspires me is my own community. Like I've spoken a lot on how I would not be here, I would not be alive if it weren't for the Black trans women I have in my life. Specifically, I wouldn't have even transitioned. I wouldn't have been in any of the positions that I have now if it weren't for them. And I also we're all here for a specific reason. So even though the inspiration is rooted in a lot of oppression, I think I'm inspired by the fact that I guess one day I might be free, somebody might be free. And like I said, I started that once I came into my own identities, of course, but I guess the top issues that I know my specific community, I don't want to speak for, I don't believe that there's just one trans community, of course. So, and I'm also not the representative for all Black trans men or Black trans mass folks either, but I do notice that an issue that we're currently facing is navigating our visibility without being hyper visible, because that's a huge difference there. That a lot of our trans elders or my trans elders haven't had to navigate in the past. Also, I would say economic justice, legislation or lack thereof on behalf of our people, employment, obviously, housing justice, all the things. And it's everything for me is a top issue because for me, it's a lot more than having a pronoun pen. I spoke about that on my Twitter today, no shade. But it's a lot bigger than saying what your pronouns are. People are figuring out how to survive, and these issues that I guess can easily be resolved aren't necessarily being addressed or listened to by people with the resources. So I don't want to get like too deep into it. I don't want to take the answers from like from everyone, but yeah, I mean, the issues are, I guess, if you are active on social media. That's not, I guess the issues are like, if you're active on social media, you see that there is like a big issue with poverty, impoverishment, and housing. Like I'm always seeing that like a lot of us are housing insecure. Sometimes you might see like folks are trying to fund their access to hormone replacement therapy, but the biggest things that I'm seeing, and I guess this is only speaking for the organizing communities that I'm a part of, is access to survival in general.
Thank you so much for sharing, and it's so important to talk about housing insecurity, economic justice, because we realize that that's such an important issue, and thank you for organizing around that. Mya, Jade, Jurnee, do you all have any inputs on what Black trans liberation looks like for your community, and what inspires your activism?
I guess I'll go next. So for me, Black trans liberation really is more on like perspective really being changed, because like a lot of our perspective is, you know, Black trans women are guys aren't dressed, or, you know, Black trans women are like that's just how like people perceive us. And that's why I feel like where a lot of like the hate comes from, because it's kind of reactionary. I want to say, like, personally for me, I never like dealt with anything like that other than this one time where I want to say I actually when I was homeless, I went to the Salvation Army for shelter. And so basically, you know, like they were proceeding me to, you know, put me in the you know, the women's shelter. And then this one person who just came back from their smoke break was all like, yeah, I'm sorry, but she can't, you know, stay in, you know, the women's like room or whatever. And then and I was all like, why not? And then the woman at the desk was like, yes, she can. She's perfectly able to stay and she can. And then the woman straight up asked me, she was like, the only way you could stay, like the only way you could sleep with us is that if you know, you show us what's like in between your legs. And I was all like, no, I'm sorry, but like I'm gonna have to go. And then you know, I walked, and then, you know, I slept on the streets, you know. And I was kind of like, that's kind of like what really inspired it, because like I don't want people to think, oh, because yes, or like our experience of womanhood is different. And again, like I'm not speaking for like all Black trans women out there, but like yes, our experience is like different, but we're not like men in dresses, and that all we just want to do is be ourselves, express ourselves. We still want the same loves, the same houses, the same experience that cis people do. And so yeah, that's basically it.
Thank you, Mya, for sharing your story, and thank you for just talking about that experience. And you didn't have to share that with this community, but we really appreciate you sharing your experience and sharing about the importance of visibility and just basic needs. Jade and Jurnee, I would love to hear from you about what Black trans liberation looks like for you, or just what inspires your activism.
I would like to say what inspired my activism was seeing so many trans women being murdered and it not having enough news coverage, it not being spoken about, it not being cared about. And one trans woman that stood out in particular that really hurt me was my friend Malaysia Booker. And I feel like it was something that was sort of swept under the rug, and it wasn't really spoken about. It had a little bit of news coverage, but I would say that's something that really inspired me. And also seeing a lot of trans men and women not having the access to HRT and it being something that's so highly priced that they're not able to afford it. And I think that working for the Resource Center really opened my eyes because we are a low cost to free clinic. So like we are able to give people that service without it being something that like breaks their bank. We are able to get them scholarships and things of that sort.
Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you for talking about the work that the Resource Center does. May Malaysia Booker and her legacy, may she rest in power, and thank you for sharing about that personal connection. Jade, I would love to hear from you and what you think Black trans liberation looks like and what inspires your activism.
Thank you, and I appreciate everyone sharing their experience. So my activism or being an activist, similar to August, or piggybacking off of what August mentioned around, I don't really think about, being an activist more so than I think about just doing the work. I very seldom, when I see, someone have my name and then put activist, I'm like, is that really what I do? And it's a way to describe some of the things that I do, but it doesn't really resonate with me. It's not something that I claim wholeheartedly because it's so vast, the work that's being done. Some of the things that drive or that inspire me to do the work that I do started at a very, very early age where I really feel like I was like the Robin Hood of my elementary school, and people that were not treated fairly or that maybe perceived to be different due to their abilities or different abilities. Being there and standing up for them in that way. As I got older, I realized that I had a true heart for people and I had a true passion for the human experience. And that led me to just people work. After transitioning, my work in community was more centered around understanding my identity, understanding the identity of other people who share similar experiences. And very, very, very early on in that journey, I realized that there was a definite shift in how I was perceived as a human. And to be quite honest, the human experience is something that I have found to be stripped from Black trans people and trans people in general, specifically Black trans people, which yields this unexplainable, despicable reign of violence over Black trans folk, specifically Black trans women. It's everything from societal norms to community to the conditioning of Black communities puts Black trans women into this category or into this space where, because it's something that people may not understand or may be familiar with, you eradicate or you fight or you take away. And that idea just really infuriates me, and it really hurts me to my core. And it fuels my want and urge to do whatever I can to shift the paradigm, to shift the dynamic of Black community and give Black trans people their voice back and give Black trans people their human experience back. It's a lot. It's so much. It's so much more than we can cram into an hour or however long we're here today. The other parts of the question that you asked, and I'll be brief because I wanted to be able to cover more, was about liberation. And to be quite honest, I don't feel like Black community is liberated. Liberation, as someone mentioned earlier, I think is an idea, and it's the thought that you as a person or as an individual or as a community are free, and that you are free to live, to thrive, to exist. And I don't feel that the Black community has reached liberation, and in turn, Black trans community definitely hasn't reached liberation. And when individuals and people have the thought and the idea and the want to be who they are, that is where you find liberation. Then you have to actualize that with all of the other systems at play, to make that more of a reality and not just a thought. So that's kind of a blend of the two different things that you were asking, but that's just, again, my interpretation, as many of my other panelists, lovely panelists have mentioned. I can only speak from my individual experience, being a part of the community.
Thank you so much for redefining activism for like in your perspective. And thank you, August, as well, for redefining activism. I love to hear that y'all are putting in the work, and I love the reframing of that. And thank you for sharing about liberation in y'all's individuals' perspectives. So one question that I have just for anyone is about Black trans women and femmes and how they faced at least 3 intersectional disadvantages of white supremacy, of transphobia, of the patriarchy, and what is the importance of addressing the intersectional experiences of marginalized racial and gender identities?
I'm assuming that one of Jurnee, you are going to go first. Let's see. That question is a lot. It's a lot. Thinking about just intersections in general and how in my opinion, intersections is what makes, or intersections are what make our communities diverse. And if you don't address the intersections in the same way that you would essentially like eat a meal, like piece by piece, then I don't think that you can like address them as a whole. I think that oftentimes people try to take all of the things on at one time and give them all equal amount of bandwidth, but in reality, equality doesn't always equal like the same amount. So when we're talking about the 3 different intersections that you mentioned, which one takes the biggest priority, or which one is causing the most damage, which one needs to be eradicated first? And I don't really know that I have the answer to that question. But what I can say is that all of them play a vital part in the things that have been happening in community and the things that we consistently are fighting against.
Thank you for answering that, and thank you for framing it very well. I think that there are tons of different things that people combat, and there's so many different intersections, and thank you for sharing that, you know, this is your perspective and that we have to, you know, the intersections are what makes each community vital and viable. Guess building on that previous question, it's undeniable that we're living in an epidemic of violence against trans people. Jurnee mentioned before about Malaysia Booker, and we know that inside of Dallas, there's been Chanel Lindsay, as well as Mercy Mack. May they all rest in power. What does it look like to honor them? And what does it look like to honor them in our activism or in our work that we're doing or in our daily lives?
I think that to honor them, it will look like being their voice. And not only their voice, but being our own voices and being the voices for everyone that doesn't have a voice. So I don't want to keep saying the word activism as much as like this is our community. This is who we are. So it's more or less just togetherness, coming together and rebuilding the foundation of everything for in their memory and for us and for everyone coming after us.
I know for me,
Sorry.
oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. Please go.
Okay. Yeah, when I was looking at this question, I was like, I've been asking myself this since, like I'm a Southern Marylander, so a lot of the, I guess what I'm tackling right now is, so Zoe Spears, who was one of my really, really good friends. I rarely talk about her to this day, but for me, honoring her, I think it depends on who you're figuring out, like who you're honoring, I guess. And questions that I've been really asking myself is, how can you honor the legacy of trans people and also honor their families who might not have recognized their identities? A lot of the work that I've done in the past couple months has been with Tony McDade's family. And it's really complex, like, because who, as a cis person, I'm obviously not cis, but like majority of the participants here are cis, and it's like, how do you give that respect and everything? And for me, it's about showing up materially for causes that are already on the ground doing the work, to ensure that we are surviving. So I personally have my own politic that I'm not going to donate to large nonprofits who don't do any sort of direct service, who aren't basically like giving money to transitional funds or housing funds or food security funds, like all of that. If I cannot identify that in an organization's work, it's not really, I'm not really gonna open my purse for that. And also giving your money directly to Black trans folks who are clearly crying out and asking for what they need. I think a lot of times, well-meaning folks want to, or come up with their own ways of what help looks like, what support looks like, but oftentimes we see what people are asking for and aren't actually listening. So, I mean, that's just one way. And then another, I guess I'm thinking about, what do we do after? Because the before is opening your purse, donating, doing the work in terms of educating yourself on trans experiences and all that. But when violence does occur, how are you speaking about this? Because it's bigger, to me, it's bigger than just sharing something on Twitter or on Facebook or whatever about with a hashtag. Like, it's great for that visibility portion, but we all know that Black trans death is profitable. Like, it doesn't sound like it when you think about it, but it is. And you, in like a social justice world, when you say a name or any of that, you're gonna get a lot of clout around that. But what are you tangibly doing? Are you having the conversations with your family members who might be transphobic? Are you having the conversations, if you're cishet, with your transphobic partner? Like, there are conversations you have to have and really dig deep into places that are uncomfortable for you to even claim that you're honoring Black trans folks who have already passed.
Yeah, and tagging kind of off of your question and what you've shared, I guess the next question is, what role, if any, do you see an allies having in liberation for Black trans people or putting in the work to support Black trans people?
I think for me, of the things that I can appreciate about allies, one is understanding what an ally is. And I think it's important to note that an ally may be different for every single person. So my idea of an ally for me may not be an ally for someone else. And allyship does not equal the ability to speak for. Allyship does not equal I fully understand. Allyship does not equal because I support, or because I recognize, or because I have a friend that happens to be a Black trans woman, that I am a subject matter expert for Black trans women. That is not allyship, in my opinion. However, individuals that are truly seeking to know, to understand, to listen, to learn, as August mentioned, to shift the construct that people are so conditioned to believe, transphobia, the different mindsets that people have around Black trans people. For those individuals that are truly wanting to be allies, I think it's important that you go to Black trans communities, you go to Black trans organizations, and get knowledge, get educated, get support to truly be the best possible ally that you can be. It's very difficult as a Black trans person in this work to consistently have to explain to people or to teach people, especially around when Black trans women are murdered. And I think that people have good intentions, but right in the midst of something happening like that is not probably the best time to, ask your fellow Black trans friend, all these different questions around the different things, because majority of the time, or far often than not, we're processing and we're grieving and going through a multitude of different emotions and experiences that we may not be able to formulate and put into words, but that is a true and real place. So in short, and in long, because I seem to be long-winded, which is why I haven't been going first. I tend to talk quite a bit. Jennifer will tell you that. And in short, I think it's important for allies to truly embrace what being an ally is, and to not only provide space to people, but bringing someone to the table where decisions are being made, bringing someone to the table where people may not ordinarily be reached by someone who is a Black trans individual, and kind of leveraging whatever privilege that you have to support and to elevate the voice, the lives, the experiences of Black trans folk. That's what I would say.
I just want to piggyback off of some of the other panelists said. I feel like, being an ally could mean multiple different things. It could mean, getting education, getting some education, because, we are going through like a tough couple of years. And I want to say, like, the best way for I feel like allies who want to like support and like do a little more support with like out of education is, have these conversations, like what August said, have these conversations at not their most accepting place, because this is an actual fact, but 70% of people actually know a transgender person, like just any transgender person. And so like, a lot of their perception and perspective comes from the media. And so, they're not really like, it's not that they don't want to like learn from the matter. It's just that like, they don't have anyone to really bring the matter to the table other than media. And so I feel like if you want to like be a better ally, is to just, or to be an ally, or a role for an ally to have, is to, get education if you want to leave it at that, and have these conversations at your table. You could go ahead and donate, but I feel like the best way to like make a change, not with, you know, with the community of the United States of America, is to, you know, is to actually sit down and have these tough conversations in your homes or with your friends. And so, yeah.
Thank you for imparting that wisdom and redefining allyship and talking about, you know, what we can do like inside of our own homework and inside of our own communities, and how we can be allies in that space. And Jade, thank you for your both long and short answer. It was really important and really powerful. I want to hear just about a time that you felt powerfully seen or heard or celebrated, to move into like a lighter tone, and just talk about like a time where you enjoyed and you felt seen and it was powerful and it was a great experience.
I can go. I'm hoping everyone else is just nervous that they do have a powerful moment. But if for any reason my fellow panelists don't, that also speaks volumes to the experience of Black trans folk. I would have to say I've been very privileged to be in a few situations that I truly felt the voices of my community were heard. I happen to represent my community in those spaces, one of which was at Creating Change this past year, or this current year. 2020 just seems like it's last year because of everything that's been going on. Anyway. So Creating Change 2020, I had the opportunity to speak amongst several other amazing trans women of color at the Creating Change plenary, State of the Movement plenary. And it was really a great opportunity to focus the voice or the voices of women of trans experience. And it was just, it was one of the few times where I truly felt that my voice was elevated and not propagated or toted or what's the word I'm looking for? Can't think of the word I'm looking for, but that word. It was the one time where I didn't feel that, and it felt good. I would be remiss if I didn't say it was a fleeting emotion. It lasted for that panel, and that was about it. Because the reality set in not long after that, you know, as you know, just the world continues to spiral in some different way. But again, this is supposed to be an upbeat thing, so I felt great, wonderful, amazing, lovely, lighted, and seen. Go team, go.
Thank you for sharing about that moment. And thank you for sharing about the power of that moment, but and also in the midst of the world that we're living in, how these moments can be fleeting. Thank you for sharing about that. I guess my question is, y'all really shared a lot about what we can do now, but I kind of want to hear more of just if you have any, like, what can we do more? What can every people, our audience members, do to support your work in terms of donating or following on social media? We realize there's more to doing that, but what can we do to support the work that you're putting into your community? What can the audience do to move forward and support you?
Okay, I'll go. So like I said in the beginning, the foundation is very new, like June new. And within the first 15 days of releasing the GoFundMe, we raised, actually, I think it was the first month, we raised $30,000 with just individual donors, no big names, no big organizations. And we're actually going live tomorrow about that because, girl, I need a drink. But I am like really excited. Like I'm only 20, I'll be 23 in like next week. So this is like really huge. This is big stuff. It's great. I'm just really excited.
Yeah, wow.
So right now we're in the process of like visibility. So obviously, if y'all want to open your purse by all means. But also like myself and my founder are also having a really great time reading the narratives of Black trans students. So if y'all know like Black trans students who need funding in terms of school, and it doesn't have to just be higher ed, we're also funding trade schools. If you want to be a yogi, if you want to be a pastor or an imam, whatever, like do your thing. But yeah, like it's really fun reading those. So, and we have 400 to get through. So if you know any trans folks who are looking to go to school, send the application their way. I can link it in the chat, or Lamisa, link it in the chat, either one. But of course, we're always doing donations. If you have an org and want to like partner with us in terms of like IG lives, takeovers, whatever, we're really just trying to get like visibility right now because we're only a month in. But yeah, really excited about that. I think that's pretty much it. Oh yeah, and following on social media, of course. So that's what I have so far.
We will definitely follow you all on social media. And I urge everyone else to do so as well. I guess like my last moment is like, if anybody has any words of wisdom or any words of reflection that you have for this audience member, the audience members here today, just some parting like advice, words, reflections about this panel or just about anything.
Okay, I guess I'll go. So I just want to say, first of all, I do want to like thank everyone for coming. I just want to say to like everyone, like you could always start the conversations with, you know, in your house or in your household. And like, I do want to say that for people who feel like they're not being heard, for trans people who feel like who are not being heard, I just want to let you know that your brother, your sisters, and your non-binary people, they hear you. And so just know that you're loved, and that, you know, and the same goes for like those allies. We really do appreciate y'all, because like no like no civil rights wars ever won by themselves. They always have allies. And so like, even though you guys may not feel like you're like actually doing something, but you're opening up people's minds, and we really do want to thank y'all for that. And so yeah.
Thank you, Maya.
Oh, sorry.
Jade, go.
Was anyone else going to say something before I say something? I'm sorry.
Nope.
No?
It's the world of Zoom, you know.
Yeah, I guess for me, I would say there have been a lot of resources that have come out recently around Black-led, Black-centered, or Black-led organizations, many grassroots organizations. These lists are readily available and are a good way to find out how to monetarily donate and or volunteer of your time, effort, energy to the movement work that's going on currently. And then also possibly for organizations that are newer, as August mentioned, the foundation, I think it's really important to reach out to grassroots organizations moreover than larger organizations. As I would probably not say, even though this is recorded, I probably would say I mean, Age United is a huge organization. We get, you know, funding from many different streams. Clearly, I work for a $10 million initiative, right? So, however, there are so many grassroots organizations that are doing amazing work. And so it may take a little bit more digging and conversations with folks to find them. But that is where I feel like the most impact can be made in community as of right now. Not the organizations that you see all the time or on BET or whatever the case may be, but the organizations that are oftentimes not talked about or kind of hidden amongst all of the other things that are overlapping.
Thank you for challenging us to seek those organizations out. I saw your mute button unmove. Do you want to share any words?
I would like to think that most of the participants are allies, and I would like to say, stand with us. There's strength in numbers. You know, like, I feel like inclusivity is something that we're going to battle for a long time. And I want everybody to sort of look beyond our gender identities and look beyond sexual preference and see us for ourselves. We're people at the end of the day, just like everyone else. And I think there will be a shift in the social environment and the political environment when we're just seen as people and we're included in the social norms. So just stand with us and be a part of us, invite us in.
I just had one more thing. There is, so I don't know if, like, I know this is like a great fellowship and everything. If y'all have heard of Southerners on New Ground, okay, got some yeses. I've been a member for a bit, and if you're in like the beginning stages of organizing, base building, mutual aid, they have this like summer like white trader series that I think is really great for non-Black allies to like really engage in what it means to stand in solidarity and be in the struggle with Black folks. So yeah, Southerners on the Ground.
Thanks for sharing that resource. I just followed it up on my phone. Thank you all for sharing all these resources.
Oh, also real quick sidebar about something too. So it also doesn't just have to be resources for organizations. If you know of a trans person, of a Black trans person, it doesn't always have to be just monetary or, you know, whatever the case may be. I think it's important to note that anything that is offered as support may be helpful to someone. That's your voice, that's checking in to see how they're doing, if they actually need anything, are they okay, have they eaten, like just basic things that give people the feeling that someone cares. It does an immeasurable amount of good in some ways, or it can. So also just offering that up, because I know we're talking about organizations and things of that nature, but many people may know individuals. So I wanted to say that, and then I'm done.
Thank you for that charge. Both organizations and individuals, we need to do both. Well, I want to thank you all so much for joining us on this panel. On behalf of the Human Rights Program, I'm so glad to have this, to be able to moderate this section, and I'm so glad to be able to moderate with you and have this discussion. Each one of y'all's experiences and each one of your work and the work that you're putting in is incredible. And so I'm going to pass the Zoom mic to Lamisa Ali, who organized this wonderful panel.
Hi again, everyone. Please join me in thanking this fantastic panel. Thank you to Bethany for moderating, and we had such a great time hearing and learning from all of you about your important social justice work in your communities and as individuals regarding Black trans rights. Now we will be moving on to our audience question and answer session. I will give you, the audience, a minute or two to private message any questions you would like to see discussed to my colleague Lamisa Mustafa, who will be our next moderator. Thank you.
I rename myself so that you can very clearly see that I'm taking questions.
And might I say that for people that may have questions, I can speak for myself. As someone that does this work, I'm very, in a way, desensitized to answering questions about trans myths. So I want to say, don't be afraid of asking something the wrong way or asking a question in that way. But I can only speak for myself. So of course, if you have to question yourself, or if you feel like it's going to be something that's not a good thing to ask or what have you, then go with your gut. But at the same time, don't be afraid to ask the question.
Okay, we have some people who have submitted things already. So I'll just share as I receive them in the order that I receive them. So hi again, my name is Lamisa Mustafa. Yeah, there are 2 Lamisas in our SMU human rights community. It's honestly really fun. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I serve as the administrative director of the SMU Human Rights Council. So my first name actually isn't Question, in case you're wondering. So one of our questions is for all of the panelists, and it's just related to the nature of this work. I think we often forget then that in the human rights field, the personal necessarily becomes the professional and vice versa. And you know, we've heard all of our panelists speak to that today. So I was wondering if y'all could share your strategies for self-care, which we obviously hear, but it's a real thing, and just what you do to look after your own wellness, even as you work toward community wellness and justice.
I guess I could go for this one. Okay, so like, so you know, being an advocate could sometimes be a lot, and I guess like, and like, I'm 20 years old, and so like, you know, like, I'm usually like the youngest person when it comes to like, you know, panels or super discussions or anything like that, and so you know, I guess one of the ways for me for like to de-stress myself after like a long day of like hectic talks or like a really long discussion is to like, you know, like to just sit back and listen to music or watch something on Hulu or just talk to a friend, because you know, I'm still 20, I'm trying to have some fun, and I want to say that and that's basically it, just like de-stressing, like, you know, watching, entertaining myself, listening to music, trying to like, you know, stay up with the trends. And yeah, that's basically it.
I know for myself, like I have a really hard time saying no and taking breaks. Like if you know me, you know that I quite literally do not say no, even if I can't afford it, even if I don't have the capacity for it. And somebody tapped me on the shoulder recently and was like, you need to take a step back, quite literally, like from organizing, from this, because you're gonna burn out. I have 3 jobs on top of organizing. Still broke though, don't know how that's happening. But the self-care part for me is crying. I cry a lot, and I love a good gospel playlist. Love my Donnie McClurkin and my Hezekiah Walker. But yeah, I really do feel a huge like emotional and spiritual release just by allowing myself to cry and not hold up all these barriers that I do throughout the day. Also lately I've been swimming a lot more because like I haven't been able to do that in a minute. So I think physical, like bodily reactions to things, or like intentionally allowing myself to move, like movement, that's what it is, it's movement. For me, that is self-care, and spending my money on a good glass of wine. Also, Jade, I love your background change. I'm a really huge fan of that. I just wanted to put that out there.
Sorry, I usually do wardrobe changes, but you know, I can't do that right now. That was a joke, but yeah.
I laughed, for the record.
That's okay. I have such a dry sense of humor. I'm like a Black trans version of Larry David. That know who he is. There you go. See, y'all get it. So for me, I deal with a lot of my stress and a lot of pain and things of that nature through humor. Though I don't get paid for my humor and for my comedic anecdotes and voices and those different things. A lot of people don't have an opportunity to know the comedian that lies within me, because majority of the time I'm working. Similar to some of the other panelists, I work a lot. So much so sometimes I don't forget to eat. And you're like, how do you forget to eat? But it's a real place. My fiance all the time is hounding me about eating, or did you eat? And you know, majority of the time, like today, I can probably tell you that I don't remember if I did eat or not, but I know I got a lot of work done. So yeah, it's difficult when you are in certain places or certain spaces to center yourself when there's a whole community of people that are hurting. I am a very hypersensitive empath, for those of you that know what that is, and for those of you that don't, I recommend you look it up, because I'm not going to tell you because it takes so much time. And it makes it really, really difficult to experience all the different things that are going on all at once, and so I have to be very mindful of what I invite into my eye gates, my ear gates, and into my space. As such, it's a constant battle to make sure that I center self. But it happens sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't. And my goal is to try and get to a better place where I'm able to take care of self more. I'm very blessed in many ways. So that's where I'm going to end this.
Thank you. Jurnee, did you want to share?
I don't really have much to add about self-care. I feel like once I come home and I'm able to like sort of sit down and soak into the sheets and turn on Netflix, that's sort of my way of self-care and getting the day off of my mind, at least for a couple of hours.
Thank you. I'm sure we'd love to hear your Netflix recommendations if you want to share. Okay, one of our other questions is related to different things people have brought up related to just the basic needs being a part of liberation and rights. So this question is, what does employment or economic security look like when colleagues are not supportive in different workplaces or organizations? And even when organizations may have mechanisms like employee resource groups or other things, like those may not be enough either. So anyone who has any thoughts to share about that?
I definitely have thoughts to share about that. One, you're only as safe as your employer will outwardly support you. So if your employer has mechanisms in place to support, let's say, as an example of a person transitioning at the workplace, if that is something that is not outwardly communicated to all staff as something that is acknowledged, accepted, celebrated, affirmed, then it just, in my opinion, it does not exist. Because what happens, you may have someone transition at the workplace, and a subordinate or not a subordinate, but a manager or a supervisor or someone from another department acts disparagingly against this individual, and there seemingly may not be any recourse, or the idea that that the person is doing something wrong may not be on the forefront of their mind, because the employer has not outwardly expressed or outwardly educated staff on what is acceptable and what is not. I had an opportunity to transition at work while I was employed with a employer. And I'm not gonna say it out just because this has been recorded, and this is a situation where they don't outwardly say that they support. However, internally, the practices are great. I helped them to write these different processes. I was kind of a guinea pig for transitioning on the job, but I was glad to do it. But in turn, the conversation was had with everyone in the entire staff had the same conversation around what was accepted, what wasn't accepted, disciplinary action. It was amazing. So having the support from your employer in a way that you can truly feel that you're protected, at least while you're at work, is really where the buck stops, in my opinion.
Did any of our other panelists want to answer that question? All right, well, we do have other questions lined up. Someone asked, August had shared during the panel that this is a lot more than pronouns. That's like step -1000. So someone asked, what does inclusive language look like? Because pronouns are a step in the process, but obviously we hope to move beyond that. But what does inclusive language look like to you? How is it important in your work?
Yes, okay, so like something that I am trying to, I guess, implement in my younger siblings' life right now is we're trying to move away from the assumption that any of them are cishet or will be cishet growing up. Like I remember like just a few days ago, I was just like, yeah, like who are you dating anyone? It's like, instead of like, do you have a boyfriend or anything like that. Another thing that I think about is like bioessentialism and how that plays a role in our language and a lot of the rhetoric that we use. Is everyone familiar with bioessentialism? I'm like looking, shaking our heads no. Okay, let me see if I can get an example.
For people that are gonna watch it later.
I was like, God, that's such a long explanation, but like, yeah, you can look it up. I'm gonna allow you to look it up, bioessentialism. And for me, that was a huge first step, even in like freeing myself in terms of my gender identity. Like pronouns are great, that's awesome. Like let's ask people what pronouns they use in this space and everything, but and language justice is important. I know someone like spoke about that earlier as well. But for me, I guess, because I'm navigating so many different areas, like thank you, Lamisa. I'm navigating like higher education, where a lot of the work is on programming, where we're talking like LGBTQ 101, and then grassroots organizing, where it's direct action and protests, and then legislation, where we're proposing bills. So like it depends on what area you're in, that you're in, that will require you to implement some different forms of language. But I feel like I forgot the question. I forgot the question.
In inclusive language.
Like, why is that important?
Yeah. Yeah, and the person who asked also said a lot of people have a lot of different takes on it. Yeah, so just your overall thoughts about that.
I guess my overall take is that because I'm so, I prioritize being on the ground, this whole like, hey, nice to meet you, what's your pronouns, hasn't really, I don't give it as much stock. But yes, when I'm going in a classroom and it's the first day and I want my professor to ask me what my name is and not call roll, but like send out an email the night before and ask what name I would like to be called and what pronouns do I use in the classroom and all of those things. I think it really does matter like what space you're in. I do believe that yes, we should be implementing these things in every space that we're in. We should be confronting, I guess, the belief that like, because you look a certain way, that's how I'm going to address you. Like, no, we shouldn't be doing that. We shouldn't be using pronouns for folks for anyone until we have that confirmed. But I guess the biggest takeaway of this for me is all about bioessentialism. Yeah, I hope that kind of answers your question. I know I just kind of went on a tangent, but yeah, that's what I have.
Yeah, and all of us have homework to do, which I'm excited to learn more about this, so I can engage in dialogue with you about it. Okay, one of our next questions is, during our panel question about feeling celebrated and upheld and seen rather than tokenized and propagated, was something that someone brought up. So if any of the panelists want to share about what it means to include, or maybe we want to even reframe using the word include, Black trans voices and experiences without tokenization and other forms of marginalization.
I can go, but I wanted to give an opportunity if anyone else wanted to go first. Okay. One of the things that happens many times, or oftentimes, is that Black trans people or Black trans voices are an afterthought in planning of many things. That could be the formation of foundations, that could be the formation of programming, that can be the shifting of monies to communities. Very, very, very far more oftentimes than not, Black trans voices are an afterthought. A way not to tokenize someone is to invite them to the planning of whatever it is that you're doing. If it's a rally, if it's a march, if it's an event, or whatever the case may be that's focusing or centralizing the voices of Black trans people, it's important to involve them in the process, because that's how you can alleviate the potential hiccups or the potential missteps that may occur by, not on purpose, but it just may happen inadvertently. So I think in efforts to not to tokenize Black trans voices, it's important to invite them at the beginning and at the onset of whatever the situation may be. I think that was really the answer to that question. Was there another part that I didn't answer?
I think you answered it. Thank you for sharing.
My opinion.
Anyone else want to share on that question? If not, we can move on to another one. Okay. One of our other questions is, how can faith communities in particular do a better job about being in solidarity with Black trans people? This is a whole dissertation. This is 10 other panels. But in a few minutes, what do y'all have to share?
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Let me go back on mute.
Mya, can I ask you to share as someone coming from the Cathedral of Hope?
Yeah, so I want to say the best way, you said the best way for faith communities to stand in solidarity with Black trans people, right? Okay. I want to say the best way for faith communities to stand there with like solidarity is to like, I know that like I'm not gonna like speak for all religions, but I know that a lot in like the Christianity sect, that before I went to Cathedral of Hope, I went to a more real conservative church, and like I remember one time they had like this elder, and he was speaking on like trans people in general, and then you know, like he just went on like a really long tangent about like how like, you know, trans people are bad, trans people are like, you know, like the devils or like demons or whatever. And I was all like, I wasn't out at the time, and I was all like, no, they're people. And like you could, if you get to, you know, actually know them, you'll see that. And that like if you want to like, and if you think it's like okay for them to like to die, then you really need to like educate yourself on like the importance of the matter, because again, 70% of people don't really know trans people. And so it's, yeah, so I would say the best way to include is to like look past, I think I can't remember who said it, but another panelist said to like go past like our identities and our sexual like and our sexual preferences and see us for like other human beings, and that like this has to stop, and we deserve as much as like love as, you know, as other people do. And so that's it. Yeah.
I know for me, as someone who was baptized Catholic when I was like 3, and also Pentecostal, and has also attended Baptist churches and mosque on Fridays. I think the biggest thing, I'm going to speak to Christianity first, and for each denomination, the solidarity for me is an acknowledgement that in order to be in solidarity with Black trans folks, you have to acknowledge that white supremacy is a core tenet of Christianity. That includes this binary sense of gender that we are all operating within. And it's really hard, I think, for people to rid themselves of that, because Adam and Eve, right? Adam and Eve, all of that. And I think there's a desire to come from a place of love, but not a desire to ask the questions. Like no one wants to ask the questions because that might produce doubt or discomfort and all of those things. And as someone who grew up in a family of deacons and elders and bishops, God bless it, I am now like in the process of asking my family, like, you know, India Moore asked, like, when did you become cis? When did you realize that you were cishet? Like all of these questions. And it's like, well, no, you get the response, like I was born this way and this, and that. So I think solidarity is asking those questions and making folks uncomfortable in the pulpit, or, you know, like, because like we're already asking those questions of ourselves when we're questioning our own faith. So why not do the same with gender? Like is that gonna shake your faith a little bit more? Maybe it needs to be shaken up in order to get closer with God. And that's just my own personal opinion.
I'll just dip my toe in the water for this one because that's a whole, like you said, dissertation. The Black church in general is like one of the most powerful mechanisms in Black community. As someone that is immensely spiritual and not as religious, I can only speak from that lens, though I have in some way, shape, or form previously founded or been a founding member of a church. Besides the point, we're not going to go down that road. But when you think about, like August mentioned, the structures that were in place to create these different religious subsets, you really, if people really research the origin of people alone, and then also the origin of different religions and where a lot of different things come from or have come from, you'll come to realize that the outward message that is really toted the most is this idea of love. And people talk about love all the time. You know, if you've been to any church, I'm sure one of the sermons per week is about love. However, if you go the following week, that sermon might be about damnation and how you are not to love this person or you're not to love that person. So it's so conflicting. It's like you go on an emotional roller coaster. You can go on an emotional roller coaster in one church in a month if you attend all of the different services. So I think it's just important to note that from a community standpoint, that the Black church would really have to do some major shifting in the way, in the narrative, in the way that they present the narratives of people, in the way that they truly embrace this idea and this concept of what love is and what love looks like and what love should feel like for human beings and for the human experience itself. And once we get to a point where, you know, these mega churches can have a trans person on the stage talking about their experience and or ministering to people, we won't really see true change in religious communities until there's acknowledgement and there's, again, people are given their human experience back.
Thank you. So our last audience question is related to eye gates and ear gates and information more broadly. So what are some media platforms or other organizations and resources that you look to and that you'd recommend us to look to for safe and reliable information?
You can definitely check out, there's several different webinar series that have been coming more frequently now, given the current landscape that we're in. So I would definitely recommend to, if you find some information, fact check it, you know, Google it, see how relevant it is, see who produced it, where it came from, as a means to verify if it is something that, you know, is credible or it's not some type of, you know, propaganda that's, you're going to click on it and get a virus on your computer. So I think just researching the credibility of whatever resource that you find. Organizations such as AIDS United or Black Trans Advocacy Coalition are organizations, well, Black Trans Advocacy Coalition definitely can point you in the right direction as it relates to resources, specifically to whatever it is that you're wanting to find out about. I think it's important to know what you're looking for or what you're wanting to know instead of just wanting to know the general, like, what do you want to know about Black trans people? What, you know, just, it's a lot easier to research and it's a lot easier to find resources when you are specific about what it is that you're trying to know and learn.
Anyone have any more to share? And if not, we can just share in the chat too, if that's easier for y'all. And I will link all of our panelists' their organization's websites here too, so everyone can keep up with their work that way. But if panelists don't have anything else for that question, then I can pass the Zoom mic to Lamisa Ali again for our formal closing.
That concludes our panel discussion tonight. Thank you to our audience members for their thoughtful questions, Lamisa M., my name twin, for moderating, and an enormous, gigantic thank you to our panelists for joining us tonight and shedding light on Black trans rights. We truly appreciate the time and expertise August, Jade, Jurnee, and Mya have provided to us tonight. And I would like to use this time to ask the panelists if they have any closing thoughts before I continue with my closing. If not, I'll just go ahead, but all right. I want to take this time to share my screen so audience members can familiarize themselves with our guest speakers' organizations. All right, can everyone see my screen? Great. So our panelists tonight are esteemed activists, organizers, community leaders, and professionals representing various organizations. August from the Frances Thompson Education Foundation, Jade from AIDS United, Jurnee from the Resource Center, and Mya from Cathedral of Hope's Transgender Council. We enjoyed hearing about their awesome work today and encourage you to take the time to check it out further. Please refer to your pre-event email, which includes links to their organization's websites, and definitely follow them on social media from there. You can also follow SMU Human Rights on Instagram and Twitter and search for us on Facebook and YouTube as well. We regularly post resources and updates regarding various social justice issues, including a graphic from a few weeks ago on our Instagram that serves as a resource guide for Black Trans Lives Matter. These are some resources our audience members here tonight can use to further learn and grow. At last, thank you to everyone for joining us today, and I especially ask our audience members to join me in graciously thanking our esteemed guest speakers, August, Jade, Jurnee, and Mya before signing off. Thank you all so very much.